Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there. To the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers, I'm really glad you're here today. How you doing? I am going to record part of this now, and hopefully there will be a really nice outcome that I will be able to report on at the end. Or not, we'll see. I want to talk to you today about not only really finding out what brings us joy, but to share with you, probably in painstaking detail, about the HSP processes that I've gone through with this whole thing around deciding that I wanted to get a kayak, and the serendipity, and then today, the major disappointment. And I just want to share with you how I'm navigating through it, because it's really been a process. And even though today I'm feeling tired and disappointed, I'm able to do the work that I need to do. I've gotten great support. I'm able to really hold that. Yes, this is disappointing. Yes, this is frustrating. And there are some things that are really going well that I'm grateful for. And I think oftentimes when we have expectations and disappointments, we do things that are good for us, especially during COVID. It's easy to fall into that. Nothing ever works out and this just stinks. And I'm really not there. And so I'd like to be able to share with you what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and so that you can see that I go through these gyrations because of my depth of processing and needing to figure things out. And it impacts my husband and how we're working through that too. So let me back up. I've kayaked a couple times in the past and I really enjoy it. I tend to be the type of person that loves having company, so it's not something I would do by myself. And I'd go to the military base and rent a kayak. But it gives me great joy to be on the water. With COVID, the base shut down and there was no kayaking. And COVID was it's been really hard for me. I really felt deeply impacted. My levels of empathy, I think the empathy overload was really hard. I hadn't been going to the gym, but trying to figure out how to move my body and get some joyful movement without having it be a big deal. Like, I just really struggled with that. And I would say probably from March until probably August, I was just really struggling. I talked to you about it. It's not like it's a big secret. And I'm not even sure how it happened, but I have a friend, Stephanie, that I've known since the 90s. She has a boyfriend, Gary, who is also my chiropractor, my kid's chiropractor, and they kayak. And somehow it came up that I could kayak with Gary because he kayaks every day. So I started kayaking once a week with him, and something just shifted for me. I love being on the water. It's peaceful. I have, as an HSP, a deep thinker, deep feeler, I have a lot of things that get pent up, and being able to use that energy and paddling and to be on the water. And if you go to my Instagram page, it's Unapologetically Sensitive. There was a day we went out, we saw these sea lions. It was amazing and fascinating. The sea lions are just feet away from my boat. And when my son came down, we were talking about this, and my other son and his girlfriend had decided that they wanted to get me a kayak for Christmas. And at this point I said, I really appreciate it, but the truth is I wouldn't kayak by myself. The first time Gary and I went kayaking, at the end, we put the kayaks on top of his car. I was really concerned that I wouldn't have the upper body strength to lift them up. We finish, and then we have to carry the kayaks from the water up to the car. Then we have to flip them and put them on the roof. I was exhausted. I was just thinking inside, this is really hard. And I asked Gary, my fear of having a kayak on my car, and I asked him, I'm afraid that the kayak would fall off on the freeway, it would kill somebody, and then I'd be devastated for the rest of my life. This is my HSP brain going to the worst possible scenario. And he told me that he's lost a kayak on the freeway before, and he was just fine with it. And every week as I would watch him tie the kayaks up after we put them on the roof of his car, I just felt like that's a lot of work. And then when my kids had said they wanted to get me a kayak, I said I really appreciate it, but I really am the type of person that I need a buddy to go with. It works for me to meet Gary on Wednesdays. We have a time and a date. I'll show up for him, but I'm not so great showing up for myself. I let it go. Gary and I continued to kayak every week. My kids came down. I just noticed that all of a sudden I feel like I came alive. I've talked to you about how much time I spent on my phone and on social media and on apps. And all of a sudden I was not spending that much time on them. And then I met with a friend and was talking about some of my resistance around things and set a goal for the week that I knew I could achieve, which was to eat one vegetable, one fruit, and to prepare one meal. And just having the bar set so low kind of activated something where I made a couple meals and I ate more than one piece of fruit and one piece of one vegetable. This week, because it's been busy and stressful, I realized I don't know if I've had a fruit and I don't know if I've had a vegetable. So I'm reinitiating that goal. And there's a lot going on right now, and I'm just allowing it to be okay if I don't. But I just noticed that kayaking gives me so much joy. It really brings me to that happy, peaceful, calm place. And there aren't a lot of things in the world that bring me joy. And the things that do are kind of, I was going to say they're silly, but that's not even fair. Having a clean windshield makes me absolutely giddy. There's something about a clean windshield when all my windows are clear, just makes me giddy. So there are only a handful of things that really bring me joy. And every time I go out on the water, I just come back feeling so peaceful and fulfilled and satisfied. So I started thinking about maybe I do want to get a kayak. And then the whole process comes in, especially during COVID. There have not been many things that bring me joy. And if something brings me joy, I just want to do it. So I started looking at used kayaks, and Gary let me use the other kayak that he usually rides. I decided I really liked it. I looked online to see where I could get one. If you listen to the episode with Lindsay Gibson, we talk about this in the episode. I decided I want to get a kayak. So I told my husband in the morning, and he was very supportive. And that afternoon, when I'd been looking at kayaks and they were really expensive, we were taking the dogs for a walk, and I said, I'm feeling really discouraged. I realized how much joy I get kayaking. It's just like my happy place, and now I'm feeling like it's expensive. And he just said, oh. So on the walk, I'm stewing. I just decompensated and circled the drain, and I went to this place of like, he doesn't care about me, and he just wants me to sit in my disappointment. And I told him how much joy it brings, and if he really loved me, he'd be encouraging me. And my friend Melissa gets how much I love being on the water, and I can't wait to tell Melissa because she's going to get it. Like, I just went downhill really, really quickly. As we're walking, I just noticed what I was thinking, what I was feeling, and when we got close to home, I felt like I could communicate, and I just said, I really want your support around this because this is really important to me. And his response was like, I'm really sorry. And he's like, I told you this morning I supported you. And so from his perspective, he already told me he supported me. And so he didn't realize that I needed more, that this was a few hours later and I needed more support. It's not a bad thing. And he just needed that information. And I'm incredibly blessed that I have an incredibly loving and patient husband. So the next morning, he's like, where are you at with the kayak? What do we need to do today? Since that time, he's just been incredibly supportive. So on Friday, one of my sons, Daniel, was down, and Steve and Daniel and I went to the kayak place. I took the kayak that I wanted to get for a test drive and loved it, decided I wanted to get it. The downside was that it would take 6 to 8 weeks to order because everybody's wanting outdoor equipment because of COVID. And I was really disappointed. And when I came back from test driving the kayak, there was a line to get in the store because I also do kayak rentals. So I said, I'll go home and I'll order it online. So we went home and I called the store and it rolled to voicemail. I left a message explaining what I wanted, and then I followed up with an email and let them know the model that I wanted, the color that I wanted. I needed to order some paddles, and then they also had a referral for a place where I could get a roof rack. Didn't hear back from them Friday. That night, I happened to be looking online because I requested to get notifications when used kayaks go on sale on a couple of different sites, and I found these 2 kayaks that were amazing with all kinds of accessories for a price that was really affordable, and it came with a paddle that would be great. There wasn't even a picture that was attached to it, but I knew this was a good kayak. It was a brand that I hadn't ever ridden on, but I knew that it was a good kayak. So what did I do? So I emailed the guy and asked what year are the kayaks and what kind of shape are they in? And he emailed me the next morning and he said, I'm OCD, I'm an engineer. They've been kept in really great shape. And he gave me some information and his phone number. So I called him and I said, the fact that you said that you were OCD gave me great joy and comfort, because to me, that's someone, and it's not diagnosable OCD. And if this is offensive to anybody, it's not my intention. But to me, that meant that he is really meticulous about his things and how he cares for them. And I said to him on the phone, I need to let you know I'm the type of person that asks a lot of questions. And either people really enjoy that or it really annoys them. And I know that when I'm making a big decision, I go through this thing around, regret, and I've got more questions, and then I get nervous and I go back and forth. And he said that was totally fine. So he answered some of my questions. We kind of talked back and forth. I'm going to go backwards a little bit because I forgot something. The Friday that Daniel and Steve and I went to try this kayak, we went to lunch afterwards. And part of what's been going on for me, the pre-decision was, it's really expensive. Can I afford it? Am I worth it? Is it really going to bring me joy? What if it doesn't bring me joy? When Daniel was down visiting, he came home for a week to visit. His roommate is really sweet, and he brings home his Nintendo Switch, and there's some games that we play. And every time he comes down during COVID, these have just been really joyful. And we played these games the night before, and we were all just really tired. It wasn't fun. It wasn't skillful. And because I'm thinking about getting this kayak, I'm thinking, the Nintendo brought me joy, and now it's not. What if I make this big investment and it doesn't bring me joy? And I was also talking with my husband about this whole thing around spending money and the investment, and what if I don't enjoy it? What if I don't appreciate it? What if it's the wrong decision? I mean, just all of this stuff, and then getting my husband's encouragement that it's okay, we can afford it, we'll figure out a way to do it. And the difficulty that I have receiving, I really think it's because of the childhood emotional neglect that receiving can be really challenging for me. After we tried out this kayak, we went to have lunch, and we were sitting outside having lunch. And my son was on his phone, but he was looking at me when my husband asked how I was doing, because I kind of want to be the type of person that goes, I want to get a kayak. I'm going to do it. Look, I got it. And instead, I go through these gyrations, which is part of my depth of processing. And I felt a little embarrassed being in front of my son, who was clearly observing me. And I said to him, I think you and I are wired very similarly. And so my hope is that this brings you some comfort if you struggle with making decisions like I do. But I said it also embarrasses me a little bit because, again, I want to be like the other 80% of like, okay, going to do it. Here we go. He didn't really respond, but during this lunchtime, we sort of talked about it. And I also said, if I get the kayak and I decide that I don't use it, that's okay. I bought a bike years ago and I used it for a while, and then it's been sitting, and then I've pulled it out once or twice during COVID. It's manageable, but I think there's this pressure to make the perfect decision, to be 100% committed, to have this, I'm going to follow through, I'm going to use it. And if I don't, there's a sense that I made a mistake or there's something bad or wrong. So now we're going to jump forward again in the story. So I'm talking to this guy who's got this kayak, and I talked to Gary about the kayak and what he has to offer. Gary and Stephanie are willing to drive 40 minutes north of where we live to take a look at it the following morning. And I also asked the guy, because these kayaks are narrow and it's longer, it's a 14-foot kayak, if we could take it out on the water because it tends to be tippy, and that makes me a little nervous. And he said we could. And I thought, good for me for asking for what I want. So the following morning, Steve and I get up early. Gary and Stephanie meet us there. I love the kayaks from the moment that I see them. They're two. That's the other thing. I'm like, I don't want two kayaks. I don't need two kayaks. But the more I started to think about it, one of my sons said he'd like to go. My other son and his girlfriend might like to go. We've never been the type of family that has like toys. It would be really nice when the kids come to town that we can take the kayaks down to the bay and kayak. So Gary gave me the seal of approval. We took the kayaks down to Carlsbad Lagoon, which I'd never been in. It was amazing. Again, if you're on TikTok or on Instagram, I've posted there, because it was like being on the Tom Sawyer adventure. I think that's what they call it at Disneyland. Obviously, there were no hippos or natives there, but it was just captivating and amazing. But I didn't have a roof rack. So we took all of the extra equipment that the seller had with the kayaks. I gave him the money for the kayaks. We washed the kayaks off. We left them. The roof rack place that I had called the day before we went gave me a price on the roof rack system, which was pretty expensive, but the seller also had the saddles that the kayaks sit on top of the roof. He had the rollers so that I could just put the kayak and roll it up on the roof. So he had a lot of the equipment, and when I called to see how much the roof rack was, I was kind of shocked. And the roof rack place was closed on Sunday and Monday, so today is Tuesday, and I had to do some thinking about what are the options because I kind of forget. Thing is, I have a small car, and the roof is only so wide, and with the system that he has for the kayaks, they need to sit side by side. And I thought about getting one system that the kayak kind of sits on its side and one could be flat, but aerodynamically, it's not the best deal for the car. And my concern was going to the place to get the roof racks on, that they would give me too many options or I wouldn't trust them or I'd get overwhelmed. So I really had to think about what is it that I'm needing. And I also know that I need to have time to process and to come up with solutions. This morning I was there when they opened. My plan was to get the roof rack put on my car, drive the 40 minutes, bring both of the kayaks home. One of them I'm going to keep on my car. The other one I'm going to store. And I'm kayaking with Gary tomorrow. And so I was like, yay, I'm going to have my kayak for tomorrow. This serendipitous thing of finding these two amazing kayaks for an amazing price, not having to wait the 6 to 8 weeks. I go to the kayak store and I tell the guy exactly what I need. And the seller told me that I needed to have a square crossbar, and I show the guy what I have, and he's like, nope, you need a round crossbar, which wasn't a big deal. We talk about systems briefly. I tell him it really helps when I have lots of information. I need some time to process. He gave me 2 printed receipts, and I said, can you tell me what it's going to cost out the door? So he printed them up, and I asked, does this include the tie downs for the bow and the stern for the front of the boat and for the back of my car? And he's like, no, I didn't include that. What about the tie downs? I didn't include that. Okay. So I look at the prices. Oh, it wasn't even the prices. And I said, and how long will it take to get these? They have to order them. He said the system that was a little less expensive would take 3 weeks. The better system would take 4 weeks. And I just felt crushed. I'm riding this high of I found these great kayaks. I'm going to take my kayak out tomorrow, and now we're looking at a month. So I said, okay, let me go outside and just process. And the price was also, I'll just tell you, it was like $630 just for the roof rack. I've got the saddles, I've got the rollers, but I don't have the tie downs, I don't have the locks, I don't have the system to go on the front and back of the car. So I go outside and I have a little cry because that's what I do when I get stressed. And I was texting Gary. I called my husband. My husband was fine. Like, if you need to spend the money, just get them. And I said, I have more questions, but I don't want to talk to the guy that I talked to. And my husband said, can you talk to somebody else? Yeah, but it's hard. It's uncomfortable. I took the time that I needed out there. The great thing was I was incredibly supported. Gary said, we can take his truck, go get the kayaks, bring them back to my house. So I'm being supported. I'm just very frustrated because it's very expensive. It's really the cost of what I'm going to need is going to end up costing me close to what I spent on the kayaks and everything else. And maybe that's okay. Maybe I just didn't prepare for this. And I'm being supported. So I go back in and I wait for another person to help me out. And I just said, I need some more information. And I explained what I needed. And he was helpful. And I noticed this when he showed me the tie-down system I thought it would go to the bumper, and he says, no, it attaches to your trunk. And I said, oh, so I can use my trunk if the kayak is on my car. I just assumed because I'm going to leave one of the kayaks on my car that I wouldn't be able to access my trunk. And the guy says to me, well, you can't get to the trunk while you're driving. So listeners, please send me an email. How many of you access your trunk from the outside while you're driving? Really? What the heck? There was something else that he said because I told him I got a no on not being able to get the system today, and I don't understand roof racks. I don't understand this. I'm trying to gather information to see if there's a workaround. And my husband, bless his heart, said, we can drive a couple of hours away if we can go pick it up, if we can get one. And the guy had said that it was apparently the warehouse is an hour and a half away. And so I'm like, well, could I drive there and get it? He's like, no, it's a warehouse. And this guy said, there's no guarantee on when we get it. And the first guy said it would be 4 weeks. So now I'm getting different information. I also left and I realized, because the first guy had looked at the equipment and told me I needed a round crossbar for it. And I said it was a square crossbar. This is the depth of processing, how it takes me time. My husband and I took the saddles and the rollers off of the square crossbar. It was not a round crossbar. This place, they're supposed to be experts, and so it brings up that sense of trust and doubt. So I was really deflated. I came home and my energy just was down. I asked some clients to shift today because I wanted to have time to make sure I could go get the stuff and bring it back, and I was all excited, and I just felt my energy plummet. And I know that that's just normal. I'm going to feel disappointed. So I came home, talked to my husband, and kind of just sat on the couch for a little bit. But I started looking at Craigslist and OfferUp and seeing if I could find any used systems that would fit my car. And I emailed a couple people and I said I need a round crossbar because that's what the quote expert told me. Note sarcasm and anger. And then realized later on that it was a square crossbar. And, like, this is my frustration. So you're hearing what goes on in the moment when I'm frustrated and disappointed. After sitting for a little while, I knew it's not going to help me to just sit in this today. And so what I need to do is I need to get into my office and get some work done. I did message some people, and I just need to take a day or two to kind of pull back and figure out what's my next move, and do I need to get more information, and who can I talk to? And what I did over the weekend was I looked at some kayaking clubs. I reached out to the contact person to get some information about what they were using for their roof rack systems, because it just helps me to have information and know what the options are. I didn't really understand how they work. So I'm just in the middle of this. I'm disappointed, I'm frustrated, and I'm going kayaking tomorrow morning at 10 with Gary, and he's got a kayak for me to use, and I've got my own paddle. So it's not like I can't kayak. I just am not as independent, and I can't go as frequently as I want. And I'm dependent on when he has time to go with me. Even though he goes every morning, he goes with somebody else who uses the kayak. So I don't have that freedom to go whenever I want. And I'm incredibly supported. There are options. I can take some time to parse this out. But it just feels like it's been this high and this low and this high and this low and this high and this low. And I had expectations today that I would be bringing a kayak home today. Oh, and so the other thing is that the night that we got home from the kayak, so we left here at 8 o'clock Sunday morning, and we didn't get home till 1:30 because we had to take the kayaks down from the ceiling. We had to load them up on the truck. We had to take one down to the lagoon. He had to come back, load the other one up, come back down to the lagoon. We had to carry the kayaks down to the lagoon. Bless my husband's heart, he sat and waited on the beach while we went and did the kayaking. We came back, and that night we're walking the dogs, and so I'm talking incessantly about the kayaks, and he said, I'm just a little tired hearing about the kayaks. I'm like, I totally get it. Would you prefer that I just not talk about it? He said, no, you can talk about it. I'm tired and I don't really have a lot to say. And again, this is the gift of knowing myself, knowing my husband, and knowing that I'm really excited about something. I'm problem solving. I'm knowing that I'm going to have to work out this roof rack system. And we had talked about doing this one thing, and I had forgotten other information, which again is our depth of processing and needing time for information to filter in, because in the moment, I kind of forget all the different things. And so I just stopped talking about it without feeling angry, without feeling resentful, knowing that this is really important to me. And so if I need to talk to other people, I can do that. And then it was funny, I kayaked with Gary on Monday, and I said, if you get kayak fatigue with me talking about it, just let me know. He's like, no, I'm good. I said, well, just let me know if you have it. Again, this is owning our traits, that when we're excited about something, when we're trying to problem solve, when we're trying to figure something out, if I viewed it negatively, I would go oh my God, I'm perseverating. And my husband would be saying all you do is talk about this and you can't let it go. And I'd be saying, my husband doesn't care. He doesn't want to. It's no, we just are really different. And I know that I'm going to talk about it and try and figure things out as much as I need to. I've got some people that are incredibly supportive, that are happy to listen to my incessant kayak talk, because it's where I'm at. So my intention in sharing all of this, that's 25 minutes so far of kayak talk. You can think about what goes on for you, whether it's something you're excited about or hurt about or disappointed about. You will need to talk about it as much as you need to talk about it until you get it sorted out. It's just what we do. The goal is to find people or find enough people that are open to hearing about it, that can join with us in our excitement, our sadness, our disappointment, our frustration, our anticipation, whatever it is, that this is just how we show up. And when we know that this is how we function, we can embrace it. I'm going to end this here and hopefully come back on. And my fantasy is I'm going to tell you that I found a great system at a quarter of the cost and it's on my car and I have my kayaks and I went out. That may not be the outcome. That would be what I would like. I would love to have a serendipitous ending to the roof rack dilemma. And it's going to be what it's going to be. And I can manage it in spite of me being disappointed, like I'm here recording. All right. So I will talk to you hopefully soon with some excellent news. Hey again. It's about 3 weeks after the recording that you just listened to give you a summary, and then I'm going to go back in and fill some details. From the time I bought the kayaks until I had both kayaks home and had 2 roof rack systems on my car was 2 weeks. And I was able to bring back one of the kayaks probably within a week of buying it. As it turns out, we got some used roof rack systems for the van. They weren't wide enough to bring back both kayaks on the vehicle. I did end up going back to the place that told me that I couldn't use my trunk while I was driving and bought the lower roof system because I can't put 2 kayaks on my car. So that's a little bit of a downside, but it's really okay. In the meantime, some of the things that happened is, I would go to look at the tie downs and I would take pictures and I would get so overwhelmed and I'd ask questions that I'd come home and I couldn't make any progress. So Steve and I went out one day to try and wrap up some of this stuff. And we had this conversation that he had thought I'd done more research than I'd done. I was doing as much as I could, but I'd get overwhelmed. So I'd get a little bit of information. And he said that he just kind of stood by and let me do my thing. And I'd had a migraine a couple days before that took me out for the week. It took me out for the weekend. And as we're driving around trying to make these decisions, like I just found tightness in my neck. I was nauseous. I was not feeling well. And I told him, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm about 8 right now with feeling stressed out about this. And I started to get angry about, and this theme came up earlier before, like, you let me swim in this by myself and you didn't help me. And I didn't say that, but I did let him know that I was doing the best that I could, and I just got so overwhelmed that I was really having a hard time making decisions. And it was really helpful because that gave him information to understand how stressful this had been for me. And he apologized because we each were going through our own things. And then that day, as we went out to look at things, we had to get something to set the kayaks on, to store the one that wouldn't be on my car. We had to get a tarp. We still had to get tie downs. We needed to get a locking system. And having him with me just made it so much easier. We would look at something, he's like, okay, let's just get it. Where I go into this overthinking of, should we look somewhere else? Can we get a better deal? Is this the best thing that we can do? I really had an opportunity to just sit in all the parts of being an HSP that usually I feel pretty balanced, but it felt like the parts of being a highly sensitive person that can be really challenging, the struggling with decision making and the overthinking and the processing and wanting to make the right decision and feeling paralyzed, were just so up. And I did have compassion for myself, and I just kind of observed that this was a really challenging time for me. So having my husband's help to just make some decisions and get what we needed to do, it was interesting. The day that we went to get one of the kayaks and bring it home on the van, we love watching the show This Is Us. If you haven't watched it and you like depth and dramas, it's amazing. But there's a couple on the show that plays worst case scenario. And we talked about our worst case scenario. And mine, as you've heard, is that the kayak would slide off the back of the van. It would injure whoever was behind us. It would cause a 20-car pileup. We'd get sued. I'd lose my kayak and I'd be damaged for the rest of my life. My husband's concern was that we would fight and we would go to bed angry that night. And I reminded him, we've already lived through that. We are not the type of couple that believes in apologizing if we're still angry. And there have been times, we've been married 23 years, so I can guarantee you there have been a couple times that we've gone to bed mad until one of us, probably me, was ready to apologize. And as it turned out, we navigated this whole thing beautifully. We did get off the freeway a couple times because we were just nervous. We're not used to hauling stuff on our roof racks. So I think last week I went out with Gary a couple of times. I think I went out Wednesday and Friday. And then Sunday, Steve went with me because we were still using the van, and I can hardly get the kayak on top of the van because it's so tall. But I went out for my first solo kayak. And I went back to see the sea lions, and it was just mesmerizing, captivating, amazing. I took all kinds of video footage. It's like magic. And as I'm paddling out to where the sea lions are, in the course of 30 seconds, I had these three thoughts. This is amazing. This is just bliss. Oh my gosh, what if I hate kayaking? What if this was a mistake? What if I get lost and nobody ever finds me? It was just so amazing to see the range of thoughts that could happen in such a small amount of time. And I've really learned to just observe my thoughts, to see them with humor. And in the episode that's coming out with Amy Marlowe McCoy, the second part of How to Heal After You've Been in a Narcissistic or Abusive Relationship, Amy reflected the part of mindfulness where we use self-compassion and come in with that reassuring voice. And I think I do it so automatically that I don't even name that that's what I'm doing. But as I observe myself go from this is the most blissful thing in the world to, oh my gosh, what if I get lost? What if I hate kayaking? It's like, it's okay. Like, just be in the moment. Just be in the moment. So this week I kayaked Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's been physically exhausting for me. That the kayak that Gary and his friend do in the morning is a little bit more than I'm up for. And so I've been really tired this week, and it's been really important for me to do it. I'm able to get the kayak on and off my car independently. I have this little cart that I can put the kayak on to take it down to the water. Gary strapped it on one day. I tried it the next day and it fell off, and I haven't mastered that. I still get a little nervous with the kayak being on the top of my car, but I've learned how to put it up. I tie it down myself. I check it out. And then it's been really interesting that I think because I've been so tired, and with some of the stuff that's going on politically, I'm just feeling really stressed out. And I have not been as excited about kayaking. And Wednesday and today is Friday. I really thought about, do I want to go? And I thought, just go down there, even if I just sit on the water and I don't do anything. And I recorded a little video today that I put on social media. And I'm kind of having this thing of the kayak was supposed to bring me joy, and I'm kayaking and I'm not feeling joy, and I've been feeling pretty meh and tired. And that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy kayaking, and it doesn't mean that I'm always going to feel joy. It's like chop wood and carry water. I just need to suit up and show up, do the next indicated step. The joy will come. Sometimes we just don't have joy, and we still do what's in front of us. We can do hard things. We can walk through difficult things. And if I withdraw and go into my cave, and if I need to do that, that's fine. The challenge is that I miss the blessing and the miracle it's going to show up soon. My energy is going to come back, or there's going to be something that really sparks some joy, or I have that sense of elation being on the water. I can tell you I felt so grateful to have a specific time that I get up and I get in my car and I go down to the bay. I have people that I meet. We have a plan for what we do, that I don't have to make any of those decisions. And that structure works really, really well for me. And I've also had this insecurity about Gary and Katie have been kayaking on their own. And so that whole thought of, am I interrupting? Am I intruding? And if the energy is off, that tendency to think, did I do something wrong? Am I being too this? Am I being too that? It's like, it's just always something. And I've just been noticing and observing and sitting with the discomfort and talking myself through it. It's a new group dynamic, and I'm accustomed to spending time one-on-one with someone. And so I think that there really are ways, and my hope is that in listening to this episode, this is very kayak specific. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. We all have areas where we struggle with. And if it's around overthinking and new things and being fearful and coming up with a worst case scenario and trying to make the right decision and feeling like you're going to have to make the perfect decision, this is stuff that we all go through as human beings. And so learning the skills and learning how to observe what goes on with us. How do we walk through it? How do we get support? What do we do when we circle the drain with people that we love? I mean, I think that this is all very, very relevant if you're a human being and you're alive and you have relationships and you have to make decisions. So, where do we go from here? What has been really significant about this whole process is really allowing myself to have exactly what I wanted, to know that I deserve joy, and to work through all of these bumps around the details that you've painstakingly listened to, asking for support, getting help. And now I just know, like, it just takes time to get the kayak off the car. It takes time to get the kayak back on the car. That's just part of the work that's involved. And when there's something that we love, we just accept the whole process that goes along with it. And it's building up that muscle. It's building up strength. The fear has gotten lessened. And I'm really enjoying this process of spending time on the water a couple times a week. What is it that you're really wanting that you're not allowing yourself to have? Where is it that you have reasons or excuses why it's too expensive, or you don't have the time, or you're not able to? Even if it's just naming whatever that dream or that possibility is, allows for space for you to have what it is that you want. And if you get it and it doesn't bring you joy and you change your mind, that's okay too. I think that we have this belief that once we make a decision, it has to be the right decision for the rest of our lives. We're allowed to choose and re-choose and to figure things out and to make adjustments. And I don't think that we always know that we have that right to go for whatever it is that's going to bring us happiness, and we can shift gears whenever we need to do that. My hope is, Steve just came home with Gracie from the groomer, and she has little Halloween bows on her ear and a little Halloween bandana, and she's on my lap because she's so happy to be home. My hope is that you are having some joy, some peace. If it's a hard time, it's okay that it's a hard time. It's not permanent. It will go away. It will come back. That's just the ebb and flow of life. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for being a listener. Please know that I'm with you in thoughts, thinking about you. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's our superpower. Have a blessed day.